Okay, again, hello in Na'aleh land. We begin our Parsha. I want to begin, of course, by wishing everyone a Gemar Chesima Tova. We just have be inscribed for a ceiling of a very good year, a sweet year, productive year. We take this opportunity to thank Na'aleh for all the wonderful work they do in bringing Torah to the masses, harnessing this medium like it's never been done before to bring Torah to people that otherwise would not be accessible. We have no words to describe, but there is another good idea. This time of year when you want merits, you want to have be inscribed for a good book, make sure that you make out a proper donation for Na'aleh, for all that they do. We're so much in debt to them, so let's prove that we're in debt. Shakash Baruch, we're investing good causes and giving money to Na'aleh, which so sorely needs it. We thank the technician over here, Mrs. Libby Bamser, who's always doing faithful work, and to all the other people so much involved in Na'aleh. They prefer anonymity, but they are the brains behind the scene. It wouldn't happen without them. These wonderful women and their very esteemed father, who are the brains, the direction of this fabulous experiment of Jewish education. Today's shir is Leilin Mishas Rachalev Asvchaim Tzvi Aleh Shalom Lichtig Gan Eden. We begin Haazinu, and this is a poem. Now, obviously, a poem. I'm not the most literary person, and poems I find difficult. How much more so a poem from the Torah? It's not easy. Hence, my job of trying to convey the story of the Parsha is going to be extra difficult this week because we're discussing a poem. And yet we'll find so many messages to take home. Here's our synopsis. Moshe commenced, this is taken from Lilmod Ulamed, commenced this poetic discourse to the people by invoking the heavens and the earth as eternal witness of his warnings. He contrasted God's faithfulness and justice with the corrupt ways of his chosen nation. If Bnei Israel would but inquire of the older generation, they would be told how God had selected Israel from among the other nations, had cared for them in the wilderness, as an eagle guards its young. However, in later generations they may turn to other objects of worship. God therefore consequently promises to repay their lack of appreciation with the denial of his favor. Both the old and the young will be ravaged by disease and by the cruelty of the enemy. It will only be his concern that the enemy should not gloat that will prevent Israel from complete destruction. So what should the Jewish people do? They should realize that it's only through God's providence that they're able to fight off the vastly superior armies. They should acknowledge, these are very good words for today, when somehow we give a little too much credit to the army, the brave Israeli soldiers, and their heroism, and yet realizing that the koach comes from not from their army techniques, but from the Almighty God who controls the world. And they should acknowledge that there's only one God whose might and his power are complete. After Moshe completes this address, he's to send to Har Nevo, so he'll be able to see the land of Israel before he dies. And that's our Parsha of Haazinu. A few things which we would like to highlight. What happens is it says in our poem it says God created you with the power of forgetfulness, and you've used that power to forget him. God did man a favor. If man could remember all the heart, all the hurt, all the pain, a person, God forbid, loses a relative at that point, you don't know how you're going to continue. But it's now a blessing which has been imbued in man's psyche that you forget, and the pain wanes and becomes weaker, and it's not as sharp. If a person thinks about this, then if a person, since the pain is diminished with forgetfulness, that's your own advantage. So what happened is God gave man the ability to forget, and we used it to the disadvantage of God. What happens is we forget what God did for us. And the Dubno Magi gives one of his famous mashal. He says like this: a person was very heavily in debt. He couldn't pay off his debts. He said, you know what? Go pretend like you're a crazy person. They see you in Michigan, leave you alone. So the guy said, hey Sam, give me back my money. Sam, my money. And they realized there's no one to talk to. Someone said, hey Sam, where's my money? They didn't know one to talk to. And this gimmick was great. And then the person who gave him the advice said, hey Sam, you owe me $100. Hey, you can't try that shtick on me. I taught you this trick. You can't do that. It says in the Magi, that's what happened. God did us a favor. He gave us forgetfulness, and now we're trying to use it against him. Don't forget me. I gave it to you to help you, but not that you should use it against me. And then we have a very famous pasuk also in our parsha is what happened is that you grow fat, you get old, and we were enslaved in Mitzrayim. At that time we accept God's leadership very willingly. And then we're attacked by our enemies, and we plead to God to protect us. And then later, we get very established in our land. We go to other lands. We're out actually in the diaspora. And even there, we become affluent and established. And at times like this, we forget about God. And what happens is we get a little too fat, a little bit too much living off the plenty, which we're going to talk about more today, Mr. Shem. If we live off the plenty and we begin to forget God.